Sebastian Davis is a bright student studying in one of Korea's biggest schools for the children of the privileged. However, he comes from a humble background and only managed to secure an admission based on his brilliant academic performance. In the beginning, he introduces us to his class fellows based on their rating of golden spoons on a scale of 10. The golden spoon refers to the generational wealth those young people hold since birth. The richest of them all is Isaac Walker, the descendant of President Walker from the Ames Group, the second largest business group in the entire country. Later that night, Sebastian meets his best friend Jasper, who comes to the convenience store where he works and shows off his new expensive shoes. Jasper proudly tells him that they're a gift from his mother. Like Sebastian, he's also a scholarship student and they treat each other like brothers. Jasper chats about some casual stuff before finally leaving, but he turns to watch Sebastian sadly after coming out of the store. The next morning, Sebastian is shocked to learn about Jasper's sudden demise along with his parents and runs to his best friend's home. It's revealed that Jasper's parents chose to give up on their life when cornered by poverty, leaving the young man grieving and at a loss of knowing what to do. So he chose to live the last few hours of his life happily before eventually finishing himself at night. At his funeral, Sebastian seems to be lost in the memories of the young man. Coming from a humble family, they were often bullied by the rich, but Jasper would always take the blow in his stead. He'd even crack jokes about anything and everything to cheer him up later and tell him that they're not at fault and deserve to study in this school. Jasper's funeral is attended by all of his classmates and some of their families. Isaac's father is one of those people, but he's surrounded by the media and questioned about his role in the family's untimely death. It's revealed that his company intended to demolish the buildings in this area and redevelop the area according to the elite standards. The man smartly avoids the confrontation, saying he's only here for his son's classmate's funeral. After the funeral, Mr. Walker happens to watch Sebastian getting bullied by some of his class fellows and tells Isaac to stay away from him, saying poor people don't deserve their friendship. Isaac remains quiet as it turns out that he lives a controlled life with no right to voice his opinions. On the other hand, Sebastian is joined by a new co-worker named Gianna at the convenience store. The girl has a bubbly personality, so he warns him not to treat all the customers too politely, as it may backfire on her. He also wonders if she ran away from home as she's carrying her suitcase with her. His friend's death, coupled with his extremely challenging financial condition, makes him a bit insensitive and too practical for his age. So when he reaches home and finds some debt collectors arguing with his mother and sister, he simply exposes his father's hideout to them, telling them to deal with him. His attitude leaves his sister, Julia, feeling incredulous at how he chose to expose their father instead of protecting him. It's revealed that their father is a struggling comic writer with not many readers on his account. On Isaac's end, he's seen reading Sebastian's father's comic with pure delight until his father arrives and threatens to send him to a place that he may not want to go. He then leaves after giving him another chance to fix the errors in a file that he made. Immediately after his departure, Isaac gets a panic attack and stuffs some antidepressants down his throat, as the mention of that place seems to have triggered his deepest fears. Next day, Sebastian is seen on his way to Isaac's home. He's asked to bring some notes there by another classmate named Luke as a paid gig. On his way there, he encounters an old lady sitting by the roadside with a stall of antique-looking goods. The older lady tells him that all her stuff is magical items and tries to convince him to buy something. Although he doesn't believe her, Sebastian still ends up buying a golden spoon. The old lady reveals that using that spoon to eat at his friend's home thrice will switch their parents. He finds it funny as to why he'd want to change his parents, but shuts up when she counters his statement, saying he may want to do that to become rich. At Isaac's home, his friends seem to be enjoying a little get-together and praise his stepmother for her incredible piano skills. The woman is also a famous celebrity and appears lovely and sophisticated, but Isaac appears to be holding his dislike back when his friends ask for her autograph or pictures with her. The woman regards Sebastian with contempt based on his shabby dressing, until Luke reveals that he's only there for a transaction. He takes the notes, but as always, pays him in a humiliating manner as if to remind him of his social standing. To Sebastian and everyone else's surprise, Isaac doesn't let him leave after the payment and tells him that he's a guest like others. Sebastian is held back for dinner on Isaac's insistence. Luke doesn't stop humiliating him even at the dinner table and asks the maid to give him a steel or wooden spoon, saying he doesn't deserve to eat with a golden spoon like the rest of them. However, Sebastian's next step shuts him up as the young man takes out the golden spoon from his bag. Isaac looks greatly amused at this clapback. As they continue with the meal, the poor boy notices his spoon shining discreetly and figures out that it really is a magical spoon. Since he has already eaten one meal at Isaac's home, he starts digging for more information about this rich classmate of his. Sebastian discovers Isaac's weakness with calculations and helps him out in the library to clear some concepts. He also helps him prepare the report that the boy received as a task from his father and helps him gain his father's approval for it. The satisfaction in his father's eyes becomes the reason for Isaac to befriend Sebastian, and they slowly start spending most of their time together studying. For the most part, it's Isaac getting Sebastian's help with preparing the business reports received as assignments from his father. Their growing friendship works as an eyesore for their rich classmates, and a girl named Nicole even warns Isaac to beware of Sebastian, calling him an opportunist. She then tells him about Gianna's return to the city, but Isaac brushes it off and pretends to be mesmerized by her beauty before backing away with a smirk and exposing her own opportunistic behavior. On the other hand, Gianna gets excited to know that Sebastian studies at the Emperor High School. It's revealed that she herself got kicked out of her school in the UK for standing up against some bullies. In the evening, she happens to watch Sebastian talking to Isaac, who came to meet him outside the convenience store. The rich boy forcefully pays him for all the help he has been offering him lately. Sebastian only accepts the money when Isaac calls him his friend and says he actually wanted to buy a gift but didn't know what he'd like, so he chose to give money instead. Gianna is astonished to see Isaac and wonders how he's related to Sebastian. She asks Sebastian about his passion during a dinner conversation after work, and his answer leaves her stunned when he says he only wishes to become rich. For her part, Sebastian learns that she aspires to become a fiction writer. A few days later, the school announces the midterm results, and as always, Sebastian tops the result chart with his friends. However, Luke doesn't look happy about it and blames him for giving him false notes as he didn't manage to get a top position. He refuses to believe that it may be because he didn't study properly and beats the crap out of him. Sebastian feels the humiliation of poverty at its best, as he not only can't retaliate against him, but also has to bear the insult as Luke spits on his uniform. Unable to live this life anymore, he determinedly goes to Isaac's home to deliver a report. He refuses to answer his rich classmates' inquiries regarding his injuries, and instead requests him to get him something to eat, saying he's hungry. Isaac gets some noodles prepared, but before Sebastian can eat them, President Walker arrives there. His intimidating aura upon watching a man from lower social status eating at his home sends Isaac into panic as he hurriedly apologizes to Sebastian and tells him to leave before accompanying his father to his study. However, Sebastian is too tired being treated as an outcast, and in his desperation to become magically rich, sneaks back inside the dining room after Isaac's family leaves and gulps down the food bowl with his golden spoon. But he's embarrassed to see the president and his wife standing in front of him upon finishing the food. Not to mention, the lady hands him his golden spoon like some filthy, untouchable item. The encounter leaves him extremely embarrassed, where he regrets lowering himself to that level and angrily throws the golden spoon in a dustbin after coming out of their mansion. He's now beginning to believe that it's all his wishful imagination that the spoon would help him become rich. On the other hand, President Walker learns that the reports compiled by his son aren't actually his own work, and threatens to send him back to the dreadful place that scares him. From Isaac's blurred memories, it appears that he probably took someone's life in the past, and his father's threat scares him to death as he begs for another chance on his knees. Mr. Walker agrees on the condition that he frame Sebastian and get him expelled from the school. The next day, he files a complaint against Sebastian for blackmailing his son into giving him money and requests the school to throw him out. Mr. Walker's petition is obviously supported by other rich parents, as none of them seems too keen to let someone from a lower social status study by their pampered kid's side. Interestingly, Gianna also joins their school on the same day and excitedly asks around about Sebastian's seat, but Nicole reveals that the boy's on the verge of getting expelled today. She immediately goes to the principal's office in time to watch Isaac support his father's claims, and Sebastian's father begging the gang of rich parents not to expel his son from the school. However, the pleadings fall on deaf ears, and Sebastian can only watch everything helplessly. He fails to understand why Isaac would do that to him when he himself called him his friend. So, to make things clear, he invites Isaac out for a talk and asks about it. Of course, the rich yet petrified boy doesn't reveal the truth and simply says that he despises the existence of the poor, so he set him up in this trap. To this, Sebastian cunningly reveals that his statement has been recorded, and he'll see to it that it reaches the media around the country. Isaac's attitude immediately takes a dip, and he tries to snatch the recording away. The two boys end up getting near the bridge, and Sebastian accidentally slips down. Isaac's efforts to pull him up fail miserably as the boy slips past his hands and falls down into the river. As if heavily hit by the realization that he caused an innocent's death, Isaac runs away from the place. On the other hand, Sebastian almost dies with all the water obscuring his respiration, but still manages to snap back to consciousness and swims his way out of the water body thanks to a dream about his golden spoon. The bizarre series of events and constant humiliation drives him to go look for the golden spoon in the dumpster where he threw it. After retrieving it, he storms into Isaac's home against all the security guards trying to push him out and begs Mr. Walker to feed him one last meal before he disappears according to his wishes. Although stunned by his strange request, the businessman doesn't reject it and instructs his servants to serve the young boy a hearty meal. Sebastian immediately digs in and finds his spoon shining once again. Now that the spell of 3 meals has been completed successfully, he wonders if he's now magically become Chairman Walker's son, and reluctantly tries the reality by calling him father. Of course, the man doesn't recognize him as his son, and he leaves thinking he wasted his time and energy in believing that magic exists. On the other hand, Isaac finally gets a hold of his scattered emotions and urges his driver to go back to the bridge so he can find and save Sebastian. However, he meets a car accident while running towards the bridge and the world goes dark for him. Meanwhile, Sebastian is approached by Gianna on his way out of the Walker's residence, who addresses him as Isaac and blames him for wronging Sebastian. Soon, more people gather around him, including Mr. and Mrs. Walker, followed by some policemen. To Sebastian's surprise, they all address him as Isaac, and he's taken to the police station to investigate the Sebastian's disappearance, which happens to be the real Isaac. It turns out that with Sebastian's third meal, the images of Sebastian and Isaac are changed in people's minds. He's now Isaac for everyone, while the rich descendant is called Sebastian. While he's being interrogated for the supposed Sebastian's whereabouts, he's shown a footage of them hanging by the bridge. Even in the footage, their identities seem to have been swapped, as the person hanging from the bridge isn't him but Isaac. While Sebastian looks happy to finally have achieved his goal, he soon realizes the gravity of the situation when his own family doesn't recognize him and begs him to disclose their son's whereabouts. He tries calling the original Isaac's phone number, which gets answered by some mysterious person who doesn't say anything. Soon, Isaac is found and brought to a hospital. Like everyone else around him, he too seems to believe that he's Sebastian. However, a part of his brain would still play tricks on him, and he calls Sebastian with his original name. Sebastian is left to watch his own family acting all protective for someone else, as his sister scolds him for causing her brother so much trouble. He simply leaves after apologizing to the family. Meanwhile, President Walker has to halt his plans of expelling Sebastian from the school, or they might be blamed for the boys' accident as well. When Sebastian returns to the Walker residence as their heir, he does his part of research to get familiar with the family and servants to avoid getting noticed for being suspicious. The feeling of expensive stuff all around his room brings a sense of achievement as well. However, he soon realizes that he can only live this life for 1 month, as the golden spoon has the number 30 written on it, which drops to 29 after the clock strikes 12 a.m. Next day, he goes to school like a rich heir and gets to view the school with the gaze of a privileged person. He decides to take revenge from Luke for all the years of bullying first of all, and ignores the rich brat like he doesn't exist. Luke is left dumbstruck in the face of an unexpected beating from whom he considers his friend, as he intercepts his bullying session towards Sebastian's friends. Sebastian's friends also get instructed by this new Isaac to note down his contact number and contact him should anything like this happen again. On Sebastian's end, he's astonished to see Gianna studying in his class and learns that she also comes from a rich background. Not just that, the girl also requests him to stop bothering Sebastian, which makes him wonder, why would an outsider and a rich girl at that worry for him? He's later approached by Nicole, who reveals that Gianna killed someone in the middle school, but refuses to spill any further information. Sebastian tries to placate her, considering that original Isaac might have offended the girl, but she straight away kisses him before leaving him standing there speechless. On Isaac's end, although he doesn't remember his life as a rich heir, he has the deeply embedded feelings of dread and discipline in his mind from all the years of that life. This new life of being discipline-free and pampered by the family seems to be really soothing his subconscious mind, and he looks content living like that. He spends his days reading Mr. Davis's comics and enjoying the simple yet delicious meals from Mrs. Davis. This side of their son is truly astonishing for the Davis family themselves. Sebastian, on the other hand, seems to be adapting to his highly controlled lifestyle. But one thing that he takes full control of is his pocket money. He spends a lot on lavish gifts and sends them to the Davis family as an apology gift. The news of his generous spendings reaches Mr. Walker as well, who seems to be planning to demolish and rebuild the area where Jasper used to live. The supposed father-son duo meets that night at a scheduled dinner, and Mr. Walker is left dumbstruck when he tells his son to keep a hold on his expenses, but the boy confidently says that he can use his pocket money however he wants. They're soon joined by Gianna and her father, and this time Sebastian is shocked to learn that Isaac and Gianna are engaged. However, the girl confidently proposes to break off the engagement while calling it nothing more than a business deal. Sebastian follows her to the convenience store in his Isaac avatar and guides her around the work tips while working at the store. Since he's worked there for quite a long time, he knows his way around things, which leaves her quite impressed. Gianna confesses to him on their way back from work that she wishes to become independent and earn her own money, hence the job. Sebastian learns from her conversation that she and Isaac are childhood friends. He later finds Gianna's sketches in Isaac's stuff and figures that the young man has feelings for her. On the other hand, Gianna gets into an argument with her brother, who looks angry to find out that she's breaking her engagement. Her engagement was the key to the investment he was going to get from Mr. Walker and his business. However, Gianna's father doesn't let him force the girl. He requests her to reconsider her decision nonetheless. The scene briefly shifts to Luke getting beaten for his poor results by his father. The older man beats him till he bleeds and the stick gets broken, but still doesn't stop and goes to fetch his baseball bat. This leaves him feeling resentment for Sebastian, as he blames the poor boy for giving him fake notes and vows to take revenge for it. Next day, Sebastian meets Isaac, who now believes himself to be Sebastian, and tells him not to bother with sending anything to his family again, as his choice looks quite cheap anyway. Mrs. Davis also returns all the gifts to the young boy with the request that he stays away from her son. Sebastian is left worrying about how he's supposed to help his family. On the other hand, the original Isaac looks confused when he hears about his job, when Gianna asks him when he's going to rejoin her. He doesn't seem to have any recollection about any part-time job, justifiably because he's not Sebastian. However, a little focus brings some chunks of memories and a headache as he tells her that he'll soon rejoin the job. Seeing him in pain, Gianna tries to soothe his nerves, making him blush as he cluelessly inquires if she's his girlfriend. Their conversation is interrupted by Luke, who drags him to his home and beats him with his friends. The bully looks adamant on taking revenge from Sebastian for causing his bad academic performance. He'd have gone further to torture the young boy, but the original Sebastian arrives there upon getting the news and tells Luke to stay away from him. Luke doesn't look bothered with his request and simply tells him not to interfere in his matters, saying he'll finish this cheap thing today. His remarks make Sebastian furious, and he snatches the gun from the rich brat before aiming it back at him. Soon, a gunshot is heard in the vicinity. Sebastian then goes to President Walker's office and enjoys sitting on his boss seat in his absence. While casually looking around the documents, he discovers Mr. Walker's will, which states that his son Isaac won't be eligible for any inheritance after him. The revelation comes as a shock, as he wonders why a father would do that to his son. He hurries to cover up the astonishment upon watching the president enter his office. President Walker inquires with him about his purpose of visit, and he requests him not to interfere in the matter between him and Luke's father. A bit startled by his brave front, he does as asked, and tells Mr. John that he's not answerable for his son's actions, and that Isaac will deal with him himself. After that, Sebastian goes to see Luke at the hospital, where he's accompanied by his parents. It's revealed that he didn't actually shoot the guy. The bullet was shot in the wall, but it scared the bully to the point that he fell down and broke his arm under his own weight. Sebastian not only informs Mr. John about his son's bullying, but also uses the fact that they had a loaded gun at home, which is illegal, to suppress the matter. As expected, Mr. John doesn't take any further action against him. After coming out of the hospital, Sebastian offers to drop Isaac off to his home. As with their changed identities, the latter is considered Sebastian. Isaac fails to get why he's so bent on helping him, and Sebastian refuses to spill anything except saying that he feels entitled to do so because he's the reason Isaac is facing all of this. At Sebastian's home, he sadly watches his family being bullied by the landlord and debt collectors. His father goes as far as begging the landlord to give him a few more days and wipes his shoes with his Davis. Isaac's secretary George watches him being sad over the family's condition and suggests that they can help them, but Sebastian ignores it, saying they won't accept his help. As if fed up with that life of helplessness, he even thinks that he did right by choosing to switch families. Sebastian's father joins a construction company to make money as soon as possible. He keeps feeling bad for the people whose homes are being demolished by his company. He also meets another co-worker named Mr. Martin, who seems to have recently been released from the prison and carries his deceased daughter's photograph in his wallet. On the other hand, Luke and Nicole are seen watching the business news that announces Mr. Walker's another business endeavor. The pair seems to be discussing Isaac's upcoming birthday party, and Nicole mentions how Sebastian shares the same birth date as Isaac. Sebastian gets George to prepare some legal documents for his birthday and happily gets ready for the party. On the other hand, Isaac refuses to accept money from his mother as a birthday gift and instead thanks her for being his biggest gift in the world. Looks like his trauma of having a stepmother hasn't completely wiped away despite the memories having been erased, so he feels grateful to have such a great mother. They're soon joined by Gianna, who's warmly welcomed by the entire family. It's revealed that while Gianna was coming to meet the Davis family, she met the old magician lady who stopped her and gave her a letter. The old lady asked her to give this letter to Isaac, who is currently the original Sebastian, saying she failed to mention an important rule to the boy. Isaac, being the Sebastian in this case, brings her to his room, impressing her with his academic excellence shields and achievements until they both see a cockroach and end up screaming their lungs out, asking each other to kill it. The atmosphere remains a bit awkward between them for a few moments, until she receives her father's call to attend Isaac's birthday party. Isaac decides to accompany her to the party being celebrated by Sebastian. On Sebastian's end, he celebrates his birthday in a grand manner and confidently gives a birthday speech before presenting a gift to his current father, President Walker. The gift comprises Ames Group's shares, which is a pleasant surprise for the older man. When Gianna and Isaac arrive there, his drinking habits like an elite truly astonish the young girl. Later, Isaac also gives a piano performance, which apparently Sebastian is supposed to do, but he can't, for the sake of his life, play piano. Isaac leaves after the performance while Gianna gives Sebastian his gift along with the letter from the old lady. The contents of the letter reveal that if any of the two boys comes across his real parents on their birthday, their identities will immediately go back to their old lives. Panicked, Sebastian runs after Isaac, who meets Nicole on his way out and gets taken away for a talk. Sebastian only manages to see the pair enter the lift as he hugs Mr. Walker tightly to avoid his meeting with his real son. Unbeknownst to him, the letter from the old lady was dropped right where he read it. Later that night, Mr. Walker looks delighted while discussing his son's growing interest in business and decides to hand over his empire to Isaac if he continues to improve. However, the suggestion doesn't sit well with his wife, who scolds someone over the phone for their incompetence and tells them to instantly return to the city before they lose everything. The next day, Sebastian goes to meet the old lady but finds her stall empty. He's still trying to figure out a way to find her when Gianna arrives there. Sebastian is shocked to learn that she visited his original home to wish Isaac birthday and asks her if she found their little home suffocating. But Gianna's response throws him completely off the loop as she confesses being in love with Sebastian, completely unaware that the original Sebastian is standing in front of her. On the other hand, his secretary George catches Sebastian's sister fighting with the landlord and his lackeys for being a peeping Tom while she was taking a bath. Poor man even gets dragged in for a punch as she thinks that he's also the landlord's man. However, she soon realizes the truth when George helps her take care of the offenders by calling the police. As an apology, the girl offers to give him a free hairstyle and hands him the salon's card where she works. The encounter leaves him amused at her strong-minded personality, and he later discusses with Sebastian how his friend's sister left him bruised. Sebastian laughs it off, saying he was lucky enough to only receive a punch as she's known for breaking bones, but he denies knowing her personally when George inquires about it. The next day, he goes to meet the landlord and offers to buy his home, to which the older man agrees after receiving a good beating. Sebastian forces him to go and apologize to the Davis family for all his misdeeds so far as well, and watches the entire proceeding while standing outside the home. Only after finding the family at peace does he leave. Back at the Walker residence, Sebastian is served some medicine by a maid, making him wonder about what kind of disease Isaac is battling with. The scene then shifts to a poor, haggard-looking lady walking to the place where the old magician lady had her stall previously. It's revealed that she has used the old lady's golden spoon to change her fate once and is now looking for her again to gain another chance at changing her life. Sebastian is now starting to get jealous of Isaac and Gianna's closeness because he not only likes her, but also feels that she's wasting her feelings on the wrong person since he's the man she's supposed to be in love with. He goes to watch them both work at the convenience store together, and that's when he happens to catch a man mysteriously stalking the girl. This man is the construction site worker, Mr. Martin, who seems to be holding some sort of vengeance against Gianna. He follows her to a dark alley and tries to finish her off, saying she's responsible for his daughter's death, but Sebastian manages to save her by fighting the man off. They get away to sit on a bench so that she can relax, and Gianna shows her watch to Sebastian. She reveals that the watch is her mother's only keepsake with her, which was stolen by her friend 5 years ago. Since Gianna couldn't bear to part with it, she filed a complaint to the school, and as a result, her friend was found guilty and expelled from the school. A few days later, she heard about the girl's death and rushed to the funeral, but that girl's father, Mr. Martin, held her accountable for her death. Sebastian consoles Gianna, telling her not to blame herself for the past, as she isn't exactly at fault here. Upon returning to the mansion, he's summoned to Mr. Walker's study, where he confronts him for having read his will. Sebastian doesn't deny it and asks for another chance to prove his worth, as he understands that his past may have led the man not to trust him with the business. Mr. Walker looks delighted at his son's assertive statement and agrees to give him a chance, given that he proves his claims. Next day, Sebastian is startled to find the letter from the old lady in his textbook, as he receives a message from an unknown number saying, "You're not Isaac." Sebastian panics and starts looking around his classmates to figure out who it may be. He's soon approached by an angry-looking Isaac, who receives a similar text, and they try calling the phone number. Coincidentally, Gianna's phone rings at the same time before she turns it off, but Sebastian gets suspicious of her. On the other hand, Sebastian's friends meet him thinking that he's Isaac, and admit placing the envelope in his book because it had his name on it. Turns out they only found the envelope while the letter is missing from it. Sebastian gets increasingly suspicious of Gianna as he's reminded that the old lady trusted her with handing him the letter. So he tries to look into her phone in her absence but gets caught by Gianna, who shows her call record, which had a call from her father around the time she turned her phone off. The girl expresses her cluelessness about whatever messages he has received. On the other hand, Isaac overhears his classmates speculating about some ongoing romance between Sebastian and Gianna, as they both are missing from the lab class. Feeling angry, he warns Sebastian to stay away from Gianna and interrupts his plans to join him and Gianna for an outing. Sebastian is left seething in anger. Isaac's stepmother looks quite shaken with his increasing involvement in the business and inquires with him about it, but Sebastian chooses to ignore her. He simply tells a maid to send coffee to his room, leaving everyone stunned as Isaac never drank coffee. Meanwhile, Mr. Martin gets arrested, and the police called Gianna for identification, who in turn asks Sebastian to accompany her there. Upon reaching the police station, they realize that the person who got Mr. Martin arrested is Nicole. Turns out that Nicole was also one of Catherine's friends, and she had also allowed the deceased girl to live in the basement of her house. Sebastian feels suspicious of the girl and wonders if she's actually Catherine using the golden spoon to live her rich friend's life. The argument supporting his suspicion being, Catherine lived at her rich friend's home, so it's quite easy to manage to switch identities using the golden spoon. Not to mention the girl was absolutely healthy until one day she suddenly died. He calls her to meet somewhere the next day, and as expected, Nicole arrives there on time. Sebastian tries to ask her about Catherine, and if she's the girl whom Nicole had earlier said that Gianna killed someone. Nicole admits to it, saying Catherine was her friend. They visit Catherine's memorial tablet, where Sebastian asks for her reason to get Mr. Martin arrested since he's her friend's father. Nicole reveals that the man doesn't deserve to be called a father, as he never treated his daughter with love, and angrily leaves when he tries asking why she had given her basement room to Catherine. Nicole looks angry to discover that only Gianna can tell such details to Sebastian, when the three of them had decided to never utter a word about it to any outsider. Sebastian takes the chance at testing his theory and calls her with the name Catherine. leaving her frozen in her footsteps for some time before she turns around and holds him accountable for sending those prank messages to everyone. On the other hand, Gianna receives a text similar to what Isaac and Sebastian got saying, "You're not Gianna." Sebastian's friends receive a similar text as well. Turns out that their whole class received a similar text, including Nicole. While everyone is busy discussing the strange message, Luke casually admits being the culprit, saying he just wanted to tease everyone. The boy ends up having an argument with Isaac and teases him for not carrying his golden spoon around anymore. His remarks remind Isaac of the spoon, and he continues to wonder about it, even mentioning it at the dinner table, asking if anyone has seen his golden spoon. His sister scolds him for being delusional and says that the only golden item at their home was their mother's ring, which she sold to support his studies. Isaac feels guilty about it and looks hard for the golden spoon, intending to sell it to buy a ring for his mother. He decides that it must have been left at Isaac's home after failing to find it anywhere at home. Meanwhile, Sebastian is seen holding the golden spoon that now has a glowing number 7 on it, reduced from the initial number 29. He's reminded of the old lady's words that he can choose to live the swapped life for up to 10 years. Next day, Sebastian buys a luxurious apartment and imagines living there with his original family happily. Unbeknownst to him, he's being followed secretly as Isaac's stepmother is keeping a tab on him. After finalizing the purchase, he contently leaves for home, but his car gets stuck in the road, being blocked by a group of protesters. The protesters are demanding that the demolition of their homes be stopped, while the construction workers have to push them out of the way. Sebastian accidentally spots his father in the construction worker's uniform, getting scolded by the site manager, and immediately runs to intervene. He fails to grasp the older man's reason to abandon his dream of becoming a famous comic writer, but Mr. Davis explains that he's working to support his family's comfortable life. The man goes on to explain that it's his son Sebastian, whose dreams matter more now, but requests him not to reveal his job to his son. Sebastian is moved to tears watching his father sacrifice his whole existence for himself, but he's soon called away by Gianna. The pair spend some time together, and she asks about his well-being, wondering if his anxiety has improved since he developed a panic disorder after a shooting incident in the States. The question solves the mystery about the pills that he has been receiving from the maid. On the other hand, Isaac goes to the Walker residence in search of his golden spoon and refuses his stepmom's invitation for a coffee, saying he doesn't like the beverage. As if suspicious about something, the lady asks him to play piano for her and notices that he makes the same mistake as Isaac. Well, that's obviously because he is Isaac, but no one knows about it yet. On Sebastian's end, Gianna suggests that they call off their engagement now and continue being friends, but he decisively denies the request. Sebastian requests her to give another chance to their relationship, confessing his developing feelings for her, which leaves her at a loss of words. Upon returning home, Sebastian finds Isaac standing in his room, holding the golden spoon that the young man found upon looking around his stuff. Sebastian snatches the spoon away as they both fight for it, because Isaac believes that it's his. Sebastian manages to keep it with his assertive tone that Isaac might have lost his because this one belongs to him. He then gives him those pills for anxiety, labeling them as vitamins, and asks him to take a pill every day. Isaac comes across Mr. Walker on his way out of their residence, and the mere encounter is enough to trigger his trauma. The young man fails to understand his condition, as his panic attack keeps getting worse even after coming out of the house, and he nearly collapses on a bridge. On the verge of losing consciousness, he calls Mr. Davis, who rushes to his side immediately. The man helps him calm down without the use of any pills, by simply assuring his son of his support and presence, which works like magic, and he soon gets over his condition. Meanwhile, Mr. Walker learns about Sebastian's recent purchase of an apartment from his wife and inquires with George about his son's recently suspicious behavior. The assistant refuses to divulge any information, making the businessman regard him with serious contemplation. On the other hand, it's revealed that Luke sent those prank messages to everyone on Nicole's request. The girl controls him like a puppet with her fake confession of love, and he's ready to do anything for her. It's further revealed that she tipped the police about Sebastian's disappearance when he fell into the river. Even the video provided to police was recorded and sent by her. She comes out of the restaurant after meeting Luke and walks towards the police station, where she watches Mr. Martin getting sent to the central jail to complete his sentence. The girl watches the scene with utmost satisfaction and hopes that he won't be returning soon. She refers to the older man as father, thus confirming Sebastian's suspicion that she's Catherine, living the life of Nicole. Sebastian's sister, Julia, is approached by George at her salon for the free hair treatment she promised him. The man offers to help her bargain and acquire a flat at a very cheap price, saying he's acquainted with the owner who has no use of the apartment as of now. He labels it as wanting to help her, while in fact he's sent by Sebastian as a cover because he knows that they won't accept his help. Meanwhile, at Sebastian's side, he's introduced to Caleb, Isaac's step-uncle. The man treats him nicely until they're alone and immediately attacks him, warning him to stay within his limits and not get too cozy around him. Sebastian finally realizes that type of treatment Isaac must have been living through all his life, as the man reminds him of some incident that took place 5 years ago. This is the same incident that Isaac's father used to scare him as well, and turns out this man had something to do with it, and blame Isaac for it. The incident leaves Sebastian scared for his life, as he realizes that there isn't a single person in the Walker residence that genuinely cares for Isaac. Reminded of the love that his poor family has for each other, he runs back to his original home. However, reality hits hard when he watches them living a complete life with Isaac, because he's their son for them. His father, Mr. Davis, is happy to watch his family eat the fried chicken that he bought with his hard-earned income, although his wife feels sorry for the bandages on his back due to the laborious work. Isaac, on the other hand, is more than content living in this family with no psychological pressure haunting his subconscious. Sebastian watches this all as Isaac draws a portrait of his parents and leaves with a heavy heart. On the other hand, Isaac detects Sebastian's role in George's offer when Julia tells her family about it. He knows that George is Isaac's assistant and goes to warn Sebastian again to stay away from his family while refusing to accept any favors from him. Sebastian challenges him if he's never going to need money, and Isaac counters that his family is his most valuable asset, and he'll never exchange them for any wealth in the world. Sebastian is stunned by his once rich classmate's humble values when suddenly Gianna arrives there in a panicked state. The girl reveals that Sebastian's father got severely injured at his construction site and has been moved to the hospital, sending both of the boys in a frenzied state. Sebastian even surpasses Isaac in reaching the hospital and desperately calls the injured older man father when he can't even recognize him as his son. However, another man does recognize him as his son that is none other than Mr. Walker, who for some reason is found lurking near Mr. Davis and is now staring at Isaac, wondering why his son would call someone else father. It's revealed that he came to check on the man because he was working for his construction company and got injured while performing a dangerous task. Not going to check on him would affect his reputation badly, so he had to go there. Meanwhile, we get to hear Nicole's story as it's revealed that she is the person who found the old lady's letter that Sebastian had dropped in search of Isaac in his birthday party. Catherine was constantly terrorized by her father, who'd habitually beat her over small mistakes and starve her. The pair of father and daughter lived in her rich friend's servant quarters in the basement. She one day stumbled upon the old magician lady's stall in her bid to run away from a drunk, Mr. Martin Hell, bent on beating her. The older lady persuaded her to buy the golden spoon which she used to eat at Nicole's home, since the girl was kind enough to allow her friend to eat with her. As promised, the girl's identities got changed after her third meal with Nicole, and the originally sick Nicole was sent to live with Mr. Martin. The girl had some chronic disease that needed utmost care, which obviously wasn't possible with a father like Mr. Martin, and soon she died, leaving Catherine to forever live the life of Nicole unapologetically. The awkwardness between Sebastian and Mr. Walker is broken by Isaac and Gianna's arrival, who immediately go to Mr. Davis's side while Sebastian steps out of the ward with Mr. Walker. He explains that he just got emotional watching a man his father's age, who is also his friend's father, in such an injured state. Mr. Walker is persuaded to leave him at the hospital as Sebastian mentions the presence of the media and suggests that he stays to build a positive image of their company. Sebastian depressingly watches his father suffer serious injuries and vomit blood as he's taken away for an emergency surgery. He's suddenly reminded of the old lady's words that using the golden spoon means losing something or someone precious to him, and he fears that it might be his father. So he runs back to the Walker residence to retrieve the golden spoon, as today's the last day of the month that he can choose to switch their identities back by eating at his original home. However, he's stopped and gets into a fight with Caleb on his way out of the Walker residence after he tries to leave with the golden spoon and a wad of cash. Sebastian manages to escape with the golden spoon while the money is left behind on the floor. He rushes to his home and wolfs down whatever food he can get his hands onto, until Julia arrives home. The girl is startled at his sight at first, but calls him with his original name Sebastian, asking if he's all right. Relief washes over Sebastian as he cries his heart out while hugging his sister and constantly repeating that he's Sebastian. On the other hand, Sebastian's mom asks Isaac to go home and take some rest, as his father's surgery turned out to be successful, and they need to wait for 12 hours for him to regain consciousness. The young man suddenly switches back to his original identity in the middle of buying some socks for Mrs. Davis, as she was wearing a worn-out pair that hurt him. With Sebastian's transition to his original home, Mr. Davis also regains consciousness, while his son rushes to his side, still crying uncontrollably while reuniting with his family. Later, Sebastian goes to the old lady and returns her golden spoon, but she gives it back to him upon seeing the spoon shine. The woman tells him that he'll get a chance to switch parents once again after a year, and this time, he just needs to have one meal at the targeted person's home. Although he strictly denies having such delusional dreams again, as the 1-month transition has given him a reality check, he walks away with the golden spoon still clutched in his fist. Next day, Isaac wakes up dreaming of the delicious yet humble breakfasts prepared by Sebastian's mother. He looks confused as to why he'd see himself in their house and call that lady his mother. Later, Mr. Walker asks for his purpose of buying the apartment, and once again he can't come up with a reason, wondering why he did that. Isaac tries to probe George about it, hoping the young man would have an answer to his confusion, as he also finds a pair of ladies' socks in his pocket. Gianna buys some fruits, snacks, and a book for Sebastian with her first salary, and leaves them by his side while he's dozing off at the hospital. Her gesture causes the young man to be teased by his family, as they keep asking if they're dating. However, the atmosphere is soon spoiled when the construction site manager arrives there and arrogantly demands Mr. Davis to pay 100 million won for his car repair, as it appears that Mr. Davis fell on his car during the accident. The man warns them to pay up within 24 hours and goes as far as asking Julia to pay with her body when she requests him for an extension of time. Driven by desperation, the girl seriously contemplates accepting his offer, which makes her mother mad as they end up arguing with each other. Julia blames her mother for giving birth to them when they couldn't afford to live a comfortable life, which leaves the older lady heartbroken. She angrily storms away and goes to a public toilet, crying her heart out until she sees an ad suggesting an illegal sale of body organs. In the school, Isaac is puzzled to be called Sebastian by Nicole, as she tries to see if the young man chose to continue living this life. And Isaac's response, filled with confusion, confirms that Sebastian chose his old life over a life of luxury. On the other hand, Gianna overhears Sebastian's friends talking about how he urgently needs 100 million won. Sebastian tries selling Isaac's branded watch that was left on his wrist while switching back their identities, but turns out that the watch is a replica of the original. Caleb has been replacing the young man's branded stuff with replica without his notice. Sebastian is left to worry about the huge debt that he has to arrange, but the worry soon turns into horror when he overhears his mother talking to someone over the phone about selling her organs. He strictly warns her to refrain from trying any such trick, promising her that he'll arrange the money within the given time limit. After that, he goes to Mr. Walker asking for a loan, but the man denies his request, highlighting his poverty and how he won't be able to pay back, let alone provide any profit. Gianna, too, fails to convince her father for the money, so she sells her branded bags to raise the money. However, just before she can hand over the money to Sebastian, Nicole beats her to it and gives him a check with the required amount. The girl intentionally tells him that she considers him a friend and hugs him so that she can see Gianna get jealous. The scene then shifts to show that 1 year has passed since that incident, and almost the same time since the school has been completed. Gianna attends a small get-together with some of the old classmates, including Nicole, Isaac, and Sebastian's 2 friends. However, she's disappointed to learn that Sebastian is too busy with his job to come to this get-together. The young man hasn't been in touch with her all this time despite her many efforts, and she longs to see how he's doing. Her wish is finally fulfilled when she finds him standing outside the restaurant at the end of the party. But Gianna fails to talk to him as Nicole goes ahead to hold his arm and declare that the young man has come to walk her home, almost insinuating that they live together. Sebastian immediately clears the air, telling everyone that they're neighbors, but doesn't stay back to talk to Gianna and leaves with Nicole. A sad Gianna comforts herself with the pep talk that at least she got to see him, and walks away with Isaac, with whom she's become good friends now. On the other hand, Sebastian helplessly watches his family being treated like servants by Nicole's father, as it's revealed that they're bound to work for them until they pay off the debt that Nicole gave him. Nicole senses his anger and warns her father to keep his harassment out of the young man's sight, hinting that he's allowed to bother Sebastian's family in his absence. The old man seems to be having ill intentions towards Mrs. Davis, while his daughter intends to use Sebastian to marry Isaac. Meanwhile, Sebastian is busy working as many shifts as possible to be able to pay off the debt at the earliest. On Isaac's end, he's visited by his therapist, who expresses his wonder at how he's able to control his anxiety without medication. Isaac is reminded of Mr. Davis's words, urging him to take deep breaths and calm down. He admits to hearing the advice, but not knowing who that person is, as the memory belongs to his subconscious. The therapist leaves after Isaac tells him that he still can't remember things from his childhood, where he's begging someone to spare his life, while the person whom he's begging to remains in the dark. Isaac seems to be missing the Davis family without even knowing it, as his subconscious mind craves the comfort he experienced with the family. He's sitting in the lawn when Sebastian arrives there. Sebastian has accompanied Nicole there to hold the gift bags that she has brought to congratulate Mrs. Walker for releasing her new album, as the lady is a famous singer as well. Nicole sees that she's already being accompanied by Gianna, and knowing how much she cares for Sebastian, she tells Mrs. Walker not to worry about her relationship with the boy, saying he's merely a servant for her. As expected, her words don't sit well with Gianna, who reminds her in the older lady's absence to be kind towards her friend. Gianna expresses her concerns over how she has changed so drastically when she used to be the kindest girl around and had once allowed their mutual friend Catherine to stay at her home. The mention of her original name snaps something inside Nicole, as she angrily tells Gianna that Sebastian and his whole family are slaves to her in exchange for the money she lent him. She also mentions that the family is living in the same room where Catherine once lived with her father. What she didn't expect was that Isaac and Sebastian will also hear her outburst while she's busy trying to hurt Gianna. The girl continues to insult Sebastian behind his back until he comes forward and apologizes to Gianna for hiding things from her, as he feared that she may despise him for his poverty. Now that things are in the open and clear, he takes the chance to confess his love for her, as there's nothing more to be scared of. Nicole is left sitting there in embarrassment, as she didn't expect him to overhear her remarks. Not to mention, the boy was her only hope to enter the Walker residence as a bride. She's further threatened by Isaac, who blames her for ruining his life, as Gianna hurriedly follows Sebastian out and stops him to confess that she too loves him. The couple finally gets together. Next day, Gianna decides to talk things out with Nicole and goes to her home, but her father sends her to the girls' room to wait for her, as she's currently not home. She's soon joined by Isaac, who also came to see Sebastian, and the pair casually look around Nicole's room when Isaac finds Sebastian's golden spoon hidden in a flower vase. The pair fails to realize why Nicole would hide a spoon in her room, but they're soon called away for lunch, where they watch Sebastian's family literally slaving off to Nicole's father. The man keeps shouting at them for no reason at all, which both Isaac and Gianna don't like his attitude. Isaac instantly falls in love with Mrs. Davis's martinchi soup, which he has been missing subconsciously. He not only enjoys the food wholeheartedly, but also uses his social status to threaten Nicole's father to pay the Davis family for all their services, which the man has been avoiding so far. Gianna and Mrs. Davis both seem to admire this gesture, while Isaac keeps feeling hurt to watch Mrs. Davis working so hard like a meager servant. Meanwhile, Nicole is busy talking with Sebastian and tells him that she's aware of his identity swap, thus confirming his suspicions that she herself is Catherine. She tells the young man to once again switch lives with Isaac and throws his golden spoon in the lake when he refuses to do so. Sebastian looks taken aback with the loss of the golden spoon, even though he just firmly claimed that he's happy with his original family and Gianna. Nicole reveals that the spoon she threw away was a fake one, and once again tells him to do her bidding. She explains how she plans to take over the Ames group of companies by marrying Isaac, which isn't possible with the original heir, so Sebastian will have to take over for a month and help her achieve the goal. Sebastian is disgusted by the extent of her greed. Upon returning home, the pair finds Gianna and Isaac at home, where Isaac simply leaves after the meal while Nicole gets to talk to her ex-friend. Gianna warns her to treat Sebastian's family nicely and threatens to get her company's illegal activities exposed, but Nicole throws the warning back at her to worry about her own company. Turns out that her company suffers a huge loss thanks to Gianna's brother's blunders, and her father is seen requesting Mr. Walker for help, which is denied straight away. Gianna's father reminds Mr. Walker that how he helped him with Isaac's case from 5 years ago, but the man refuses to acknowledge it, saying it's all in the past. If they need his help now, they need to give their company's 70% shares to Mr. Walker. Mr. Smith leaves with a belly full of resentment and breaks off his daughter's engagement with Isaac as well. The news of their company's loss goes viral on the internet, leaving Gianna worried for her father, who comes home in a drunk state and tells her that he called off her engagement. Next day, Sebastian sneaks into Nicole's room in her absence and searches around for his golden spoon, but gets caught by her. The girl offers to give it back on the condition that he accepts her offer to swap identities with Isaac and marry her, but he refuses to do so and keeps searching around the room. Nicole tries to drag him away from her stuff, and they get quite tangled in the struggle, causing the vase with the golden spoon to fall down and break. However, Sebastian fails to see the spoon as he immediately has to hide from Nicole's father, who comes to check on his daughter upon hearing the noise. Later, he returns to his room feeling dejected and learns about Gianna's problems from his friends. Sebastian takes her out on a date to cheer her up, and the couple spends their day doing silly teenage stuff like playing games, taking funny photos with props, and enjoying fun rides. They end their date with a visit to the church, and Sebastian admits to hearing about her father's company. Gianna admits being worried for her father in turn, but also confesses to feeling comforted in his presence. Meanwhile, back at Sebastian's family's end, Nicole uses her father to tell them to move out within 10 days. Her father fails to understand her motive, but looks delighted nonetheless to finally be able to get rid of those disgustingly poor people. The man looks fed up with his daughter's charitable actions and mentions how she once accommodated her sick friend Catherine, who didn't deserve her kindness and always stole things from her. He's unaware that he lost his own daughter by getting her thrown out of the house while Catherine took his daughter's place. On the other hand, Sebastian learns about the eviction notice at the dinner table and decides to invest his and Julia's savings in the share market in a bid to earn more money in less time. He has 2 million won saved up, while Julia takes a loan of 3 million won and asks him to be careful with the investment. Unbeknownst to them, Mrs. Davis also tries her best to request some more time from Nicole's father, but the man lecherously tells her to spend a night with him in exchange of getting her debt cleared and more money. However, she runs away from the restaurant sensing his impure intentions and even slaps him in the face with her honesty that even billions can't convince her to do that. We then see Isaac confronting his father for breaking his engagement with Gianna and refuses to give up on her, but the older man looks unbothered by it. Isaac leaves the residence and tries to draw Gianna's sketches to take care of his anxiety when he's suddenly reminded of the incident from his past. He is dreadfully reminded of young students being shot dead and tries to focus more to uncover the blocked memories, but the effort only brings pain. Back at the Walker residence, his conversation with his father is overheard by Caleb and his sister, as they plan to use this chance to take over the Ames group. On the other hand, Sebastian visits his friend Jasper's memorial tablet, where he meets the old haggard lady that was previously looking for another golden spoon. He gives her some money, thinking she's a beggar, before heading home, where he finds his mother being forced to accompany Nicole's father to a hotel room. But before Sebastian could angrily intervene, he's taken away by Nicole, telling him not to take the risk of infuriating her father when he doesn't have the upper hand in this situation. She then offers to bring her father away, while Sebastian leaves angrily to mourn over his helplessness as he contemplates if he should probably switch identities with Isaac. While he's drowning in self-misery and weighing the pros and cons of the situation, he's suddenly visited by the old magician lady, who suggests that he shouldn't waste any more time if he really intends to swap himself with the rich young man. Later that night, Isaac tries to search up the case that he was involved in the past on the internet, but doesn't find anything. His assistant George suggests that they sneak into his stepmom's room to look for further details, as she definitely hold on to every piece of information that can be used against him, even though Mr. Walker got it removed from the internet. The pair waits for the older lady to step out of her room so that Isaac can slip inside, while George stays in the corridor to guard the door. He's soon stuck in a hard position as she comes back to get her phone that she forgot in her study, while Isaac finally finds the file containing the details of the shooting incident in a school in New Jersey. George makes the excuse of having come to request her to talk to Isaac for behaving strangely, while the young man in question takes this chance to hide in a cupboard. He finally comes out after she leaves and shows the name of the journalist who compiled the report to George. They decide to look for the journalist to find out the truth of the matter. On the other hand, Sebastian learns that all his investment has gone down the drain with the devaluation of the shares he invested in. He's left with nothing but to consider Nicole's offer in this desperate time. Next day, their 10 days notice period comes to an end, and the family moves out before each individual goes to their friend or a relative's home to live for the next few days, as they currently don't have a place to live. Sebastian goes to Nicole and asks her to return his golden spoon, but the girl tells him to beg on his knees in front of her friends so she can consider it. We then see Gianna, who gives up her shares in the company to her brother so that he can use them to cover up the loss. However, her father looks extremely unhappy on the move and scolds her for taking such a stupid decision when he had reserved those shares for her. The man tries to make her realize the importance of financial security, given the type of character her brother has, but she argues that she didn't want her father to go to jail, so she did what she found right. On the other hand, her brother sells her shares to Caleb, who cunningly evades the question how he's able to afford to buy all those shares. Angered by how things turned out with Mr. Walker refusing to help, Mr. Smith vows to protect his daughter at any cost and refuses to experience the downfall alone. He appears to have a cassette that he plans to use when his secretary informs him of Isaac's arrival, who has come seeking some details about the reporter who covered his case. Isaac asks the older man for that reporter's address as he's missing, but he used to be on good terms with him. He reveals that he recently remembered his classmate getting shot by someone, but wonders why the article called it self-annihilation. Mr. Smith, as if seeking his revenge, tells the young man to his horror that it's him who shot his classmate. Isaac, of course, doesn't believe him and calls him out for using such tactics to get even with his father. But the older man reveals another secret that seems to have taken the young man's guts out alive as he rushes out of their home in a bad condition. Meanwhile, a sad Gianna finds herself at the church where Sebastian is already busy praying. He has finally decided to switch families with Isaac and is cherishing every last moment as his own self. They spend some time sitting in the church, and Sebastian reveals that he prayed for his close people's happiness and that she always finds him no matter where he is and how he looks. Gianna promises to always recognize him even when he's a different person, and the couple shares their first kiss, which is also probably the last with their original selves. Later that night, Gianna returns home in a delighted mood but finds her whole house shrouded in darkness. She uses her phone to look around, but the next moment comes as a shock as she finds her father's bleeding dead body on the floor. Next day, Isaac wakes up startled and exclaims that he had a nightmare about Mr. Smith's death, but thankfully it's just a dream. However, his father tells him to hide the fact that he ever went to see Mr. Smith, telling him that Mr. Smith is really dead. The realization that he may have once again taken someone's life is too hard to bear for him, so Isaac tries jumping to his death in front of a car. However, he's intercepted by Nicole, who insists that he's not allowed to die yet. On the other hand, Sebastian forcefully enters the Walker residence with the guards on his tail and runs to the dining room. He snatches a bowl of rice from a maid and wolfs it down, as this time, he only needs one meal to switch lives. As expected, he starts appearing to be Isaac for everyone around him the moment he finishes the rice bowl. The smooth transition brings him a sense of satisfaction as he prepares to make the most out of this life, unaware of what calamity has befallen him as the person responsible for Isaac's actions. Next, Mr. Walker uses his connections to take care of everything at Mr. Smith's residence that can be used as evidence to prove Isaac's presence there. The forensic team, in fact, removes the fingerprints instead of capturing them, and news channels show the reason of death to be a heart attack. Meanwhile, Sebastian seems unaware of all the secretive activities going on, not understanding why Mr. Walker would ask him to forget about the last night while Isaac's stepmother would meaningfully mention him being drunk the previous night. His golden spoon now shows the number of 3,650, which means his transition this time is for 10 years. Meanwhile, Mr. Walker tells a maid to burn down Isaac's outfit from the previous night, and scolds George for his second mistake before giving him a last warning. It's revealed that George has been with his son since childhood under his late wife's instructions, and that's why he's willing to give him so many chances and bear with him. On the other hand, Gianna is seen mourning her father's loss and insisting that she saw blood around her father's body. However, her three greedy brothers seem to be despising her for many reasons, including her unwillingness to do as they say. They want her to admit that their father died of a heart attack. She's soon visited by Nicole, Sebastian, and Isaac, where Nicole and Sebastian seem to have recognized each other's true identities, while Gianna cries her heart out in Isaac's arms. Meanwhile, her brothers start quarreling amongst each other for the inheritance, as they discover that their elder brother sold not only Gianna's, but both of his younger brother's shares as well. Isaac intervenes at the right moment to intercept Gianna's elder brother's hand as he tries to hit her for asking them to be considerate of their father's funeral. On the other hand, Sebastian asks George to investigate the person behind Caleb, who funded the purchase of all those shares. Sebastian is greeted by Nicole's father on his way out of the funeral hall and treats him coldly. He also starts taking care of his family members immediately by first ensuring that his friend's family treats Isaac kindly, and then getting Julia promoted to the position of the official hair designer by striking a deal with the salon owner. His father gets a contract offered for his webtoon, and even his mother manages to bag some bonus from the restaurant for her hard work that can be used to find a new place to live. At the same time, he takes care of exposing Nicole's business's illegal activities, driving the girl insane as she's well aware of why he's doing all of this. The girl blames her father for their current misery as she had told him to treat Sebastian's family nicely, but he didn't pay heed to her words. Sebastian then meets Mr. Alex, the person who sponsored Caleb's cunning purchase of Gianna's company's shares. The young man impresses him with his ability to do business and proposes that Alex works with him instead of Caleb, who's merely his stepmom's brother and holds no position in his father's company. Alex accepts the invitation and withdraws his investment from Caleb's endeavors, who's about to brag about his smartness to Mr. Walker to impress him. The news about losing the investment leaves him shocked beyond wits. On Gianna's end, she seems to be having a hard time facing the real world. All the servants at home choose to quit work, including her father's secretary, Miss Renee, who doesn't look too happy with the compensation amount she's offered by the young girl. The woman's venomous tongue leaves Gianna stunned as she spitefully scolds her for practically nothing and refuses to tell her anything regarding what actually transpired the night of Mr. Smith's death. Later that night, Mr. Walker confronts Sebastian for choosing to halt Mr. Alex's investment in Caleb, and Sebastian spins a tale of doing it all for their business. He expresses how they're in the news for refusing to help Mr. Smith and causing the fatal heart attack in turn, and argues that Caleb purchasing those shares will negatively impact their company's reputation by confirming that they always wanted to gobble up Mr. Smith's company. While his statement leaves Mr. Walker impressed, his stepmom only becomes more suspicious about his motives. She discusses with her brother about the young man's strange behavior, including the night of Mr. Smith's death, and doubts that her husband is hiding some secret related to his son. Caleb determines to find out more about the matter and checks the CCTV footage from previous days, until he finds the one where Isaac returns home in a drunken state. Next day, Nicole angrily comes to meet Sebastian and blames him for being selfish when she played a vital role in bringing him to the position he's currently holding. The girl also mentions Isaac's attempt to finish himself, leaving him puzzled as to why he'd do that. On the other hand, Gianna's brothers force her into writing all of her inheritance to them, but Isaac angrily takes over the conversation, threatening to sue them for bothering her. He then leaves holding a bewildered Gianna's hand and spots a painting on the restaurant's corridor wall. Isaac tells Gianna that it's an original painting that deeply impresses Mr. Alex, who happens to be around. The man delightfully admits that he's the first person to recognize that it's an original painting and rewards him with a 50,001 note. He's further impressed with the young man's sense of humor, as Isaac mentions that he should give a bigger reward since he has a lot of money. Mr. Alex asks for Isaac's phone number and gives him another note as a reward, which he uses to buy lots of food for his girl. Meanwhile, Sebastian uses George as a scapegoat to visit Julia's salon and gives her his phone number, telling her to contact him should she ever need his help. He then leaves George in her care for a hair spa, while their conversation is overheard by Luke, who's present in the same salon. The bully immediately informs Nicole of the update, including Julia's call with her family that reveals that the family intends to meet at a restaurant for a meal. Nicole uses the information to force her father to apologize to Mrs. Davis, threatening him with their company's future. Sebastian then goes to meet Gianna, where she's busy with Isaac, who suddenly kisses her. Their moment is interrupted with Sebastian's arrival, who finds the food containers prepared by his mother and invites himself to eat them with gusto, not bothering with Isaac's remarks aimed to shame him. Sebastian expresses his disconnection with his step-uncle and instead gets to help the girl in his own way. He reveals that Gianna's brothers have already taken care of her properties and assets, leaving only the home in her possession. However, he fears that she may have to sell it as well to pay off a debt that her father acquired from a well-known company. The revelation leaves her feeling sad and cornered as she can't bear to sell her house, which was built with so much love by her father. Later that night, Isaac and Mr. Davis go to the restaurant where Mrs. Davis works in a happy mood, but they end up watching Nicole's father harassing his mother and begging her to return his company, while apologizing for trying to force himself on her. Isaac loses his mind upon hearing the man's confession and beats the crap out of him before stuffing him in a car and driving away. When Julia comes to know about the whole episode, she can only turn to Sebastian for help. asking him to do something about the matter before it blows up, saying her brother has kidnapped the older man. Shocked, Sebastian leaves the important meeting where he intends to introduce his father to Mr. Alex and runs to track Isaac down before finally stopping the young man in the middle of a road. Sebastian refuses to help Nicole's father for nothing and tells him that he needs to withhold from filing any charges against Sebastian and his family if he wants his company back, and the man eventually agrees to the deal. Meanwhile, Mr. Walker and Alex are left alone at the dinner table, and the former convinces the latter to give another chance to Caleb. He argues that even though his son is more talented than his brother-in-law, he wants him to do even better to prove his worth to be eligible to take over his business. Amused, Mr. Alex agrees to the request when Mr. Walker mentions paying him for fulfilling this deal. When Sebastian returns to the Walker residence after dealing with Isaac's outburst, he's met with Caleb, who smugly reveals having uncovered a bombastic news. The man tells him that Mr. Smith's death wasn't a natural one, but Sebastian fails to understand it until some police officers arrive there and arrest him for the homicide. On the way, Sebastian manages to find out their true identities to be gangsters, as he spots a snake tattoo on one of the supposed officers' neck. He struggles to get free from them, but to no avail as he's dragged away to a secret place with eyes covered and hands tied. The place where he's brought to turns out to be a surprise party for him, as Caleb pretends to be the jolly uncle who just wanted to play a harmless prank on his nephew. Sebastian holds back his anger in front of his friends and classmates and turns to leave, but Caleb offers him a drink which he accepts begrudgingly. However, it seems spiked as he soon turns weak on the way out of the party. He's closely followed by Caleb, who corners him in a corridor and uses force to get him to confess why he took Mr. Smith's life. While Sebastian keeps denying having done so, Nicole is seen eavesdropping on their conversation as she figures out why Isaac was trying to die the other day. On the other hand, Caleb looks confused to hear Sebastian's drunk claims that he's not Isaac but Sebastian. Next day, Sebastian wakes up in his bed and tries to probe George, asking if he thinks that he can take someone's life. However, George strictly rubbishes the idea, saying he's a soft-hearted person and would never commit such a sin as the mere sight of blood is unsettling for him. Still unconvinced and worried about his family's safety, Sebastian storms into the convenience store where Isaac is busy with his job and attacks him for hurting Juhi's father. However, he soon holds back and apologizes to the young man when he suddenly looks terrified. Coming out of the place, Sebastian decides that Isaac didn't kill Mr. Smith as he's a weak person at heart. Not to mention, he remembers the young man's effort to save him from falling in the river, which he wouldn't have done if he were so much as a littlest bit evil. Meanwhile, Nicole uses the opportunity to visit Mr. Walker at his office and tells him about Caleb's humiliating attitude towards his son, including the recent prank. Mr. Walker, of course, understands the insinuation of the deadly prank, especially when his son has anxiety issues. However, he wonders why she's so worried for his son, and the girl cunningly puts her proposal forward. She reveals her wish to marry his son and asks him to morally support her company in return, and Mr. Walker finds the deal enticing as the girl appears reliable and cunning for his naive son. However, he doesn't forget to beat the life out of Caleb for even thinking about harming his son until his wife steps in and protects her brother. Mr. Walker finally reveals that he's aware of the pair of siblings' intentions and warns his wife to stay away from his son. He goes on to claim that Caleb is just her brother, but Isaac is his son and only heir to the Walker group of companies.